In today's episode of the podcast, we're diving into a question that doesn't get asked enough. Why do so many smart kids end up feeling lost, lonely, and stuck as adults? Why is it that children who were once celebrated for their brilliance, who were praised, admired, and told they'd achieve incredible things, end up struggling the most with motivation, relationships, and even basic daily functioning? What happened along the way? These kids were supposed to be ahead. They were the ones who got it faster than anyone else. They were the top of the class, the ones teachers admired, and the ones parents bragged about. They were expected to soar through life. And yet, many of those same kids are now adults who feel stuck in place. Not only are they struggling, but they're often struggling silently, because from the outside, everything looks fine. They're still intelligent, still capable, still articulate. But inside, there's a gnawing feeling that they're somehow behind, like life is happening around them, not with them. This isn't just about failure. It's not even really about intelligence. It's about something deeper, a psychological trap that many gifted children fall into. And the trap is this: when your entire identity is built around being smart, that identity can become a prison. Let's unpack what that means. When we're young, our identities are simple. A child might say, "I'm the funny one," or "I love dinosaurs," or "I'm the one who likes to read." Kids latch onto a few traits or interests and start building their sense of self around them, and that's perfectly normal. It's how identity formation begins. But for children who are labeled smart early on, things start to shift. "Wow, you're so clever. You figured that out so fast. You're smarter than the other kids." These compliments feel good at first. In fact, they can feel amazing. You become used to being noticed for your intelligence. You get praise not just for what you do, but for how quickly and effortlessly you do it. You're not being rewarded for hard work. You're being rewarded for ease, and that's where the first crack forms. As a smart kid, you might grow up believing, "If I'm truly smart, things should come easily to me." That belief might seem harmless, but it slowly becomes dangerous, because it turns struggle into shame. When you're a child, school is often easy. You don't have to study much. You understand lessons the first time. You solve problems faster than your peers. This makes you feel special. But what happens when life stops being easy? When you encounter your first real challenge, whether it's a hard subject in school, a difficult social situation, or an unexpected failure, it doesn't just feel frustrating. It feels like an attack on your identity. Suddenly, you're no longer the smart kid. You're someone who failed, and that is terrifying. Instead of seeing challenges as opportunities to grow, you begin to avoid them. You hesitate to try new things. You don't raise your hand unless you're absolutely sure you're right. You don't apply for roles or projects unless you're confident you'll succeed. You don't allow yourself to be a beginner because being a beginner feels like being a fraud. And over time, this avoidance turns into paralysis. Here's the irony: people still see you as intelligent. On paper, you might even look accomplished, but inside, you're disconnected. You hesitate before starting things. You procrastinate, not because you're lazy, but because the pressure to be perfect makes even small tasks feel overwhelming. You struggle to follow through. You're afraid to fail. You're afraid to be seen trying, and because you've tied so much of your worth to your brain, you now feel stuck, like your best years are already behind you. The result? You start to withdraw socially. You might feel uncomfortable in groups, unsure how to relate to others. You may even feel like you're watching your own life from the outside, like everyone else is participating in something you're not invited to. And the worst part? You don't know how to explain it to anyone. How do you say, "I feel like a disappointment," when everyone tells you how impressive you are? So, what do we do? How do we undo years of conditioning? First, we recognize this. Your struggles are not signs of failure. They're signs that your old survival strategy isn't working anymore. As a child, relying on intelligence helped you navigate the world. It earned you praise, love, and recognition. But adulthood requires something different. It requires emotional resilience, effort, and the willingness to look foolish. You have to unlearn the belief that struggle equals stupidity. You have to learn to say, "I don't know," without shame. You have to start being okay with being a beginner again. And yes, that's hard, but it's also the beginning of something incredibly powerful, a new kind of self-worth, one that isn't tied to how fast you are or how flawless your performance is, but to your willingness to grow, adapt, and show up even when it's uncomfortable. You are not broken. You are not behind. You're simply living with an outdated definition of success. And once you update that definition, everything can change. So the next time you feel stuck or isolated or like you're failing at life, ask yourself, am I trying to be perfect or am I trying to grow? Because the truth is, real intelligence isn't about how fast you get things right. It's about how bravely you handle getting them wrong. And that, more than anything, is what helps smart kids finally become thriving adults. There comes a moment sometimes in your mid-20s, sometimes in your 30s, or maybe later, maybe earlier, when everything you built your identity around begins to dissolve, and it starts quietly. Maybe you achieve something you once dreamed of, a degree, a job, a title. You should feel proud, accomplished, fulfilled. But instead, you feel nothing. Or maybe you hit a wall. You're stuck in a job you hate, trapped in a routine that drains you, surrounded by people who don't really know you, and for the first time, a question creeps in. What's the point of all this? This is the existential crisis, and for the former, smart kid, it hits like a freight train, because you were told that achievement equals happiness, that intelligence would lead to meaning, that success would fill the void. But here you are, smart, maybe even successful, and somehow the emptiness is louder than ever. You begin to realize the path you followed wasn't chosen. It was assigned. You were praised for what you could do, but never asked who you wanted to become. You became a machine, efficient, productive, impressive, but deeply disconnected from your own soul, and now you're staring into that void. No answers, no formulas, no one to impress, just questions. What am I doing this for? Whose life am I really living? What do I even care about? It's disorienting and painful, because meaning isn't something you can download, decode, or debate. It's something you have to feel, something you have to build, often from nothing, and that terrifies someone whose whole life was about knowing things. You realize the brain that once helped you solve puzzles and pass tests is now tormenting you, analyzing, overthinking, comparing. You scroll past pictures of former classmates, happy, married, traveling, figured it out, and deep down, you wonder if you're the only one who feels this lost. But let me tell you something. You're not broken, you're not late, you're just finally waking up. Waking up from the performance, from the pressure, from the illusion that your worth is measured in GPA, productivity, or praise, and now you get to ask, what actually matters to me? That question, terrifying as it is also the beginning of your freedom, because when you stop chasing what looks good, you can start searching for what feels true. Maybe it's not a six-figure job, maybe it's art, maybe it's kindness, maybe it's building something that no one else understands, maybe, and this is radical, maybe it's peace. But to find that meaning, you have to let go of the map you were given as a child, the one that said, be smart and everything will work out. It was never about being smart, it was always about being whole. And that, my friend, is something no report card could ever teach you. You were the smart kid. That was your role, your identity, your armor, and maybe you wore it proudly for a while. Maybe it opened doors, won admiration, made you feel special, but now that same label feels like a cage, because what once felt like power now feels like pressure. And the truth is, you're tired. Tired of performing. Tired of being the one who should know better. Tired of living up to expectations you never agreed to in the first place. So now comes the hard part, not just understanding why you feel lost, but having the courage to break free from that identity entirely. Let's be honest. Letting go of the smart kid identity feels like killing a part of yourself, because it's not just a word, it's the lens through which you've seen the entire world. It shaped how people treated you, how you treated yourself, and how you defined success, failure, and self-worth. So, to release that label is to face a terrifying possibility. If I'm not the smart one, then who am I? But here's what no one tells you. That identity, as shiny and powerful as it was never you. It was a costume, a role you played to earn love, approval, safety. It was a shield you held up to survive in a world that only valued what you could produce, not who you truly are. So, how do you break free? Yes, Average, imperfect human. You don't have to excel at everything. You don't have to be brilliant 24/7. You're allowed to learn slowly, fail publicly, and still be worthy of love and respect. That's not regression. That's liberation. Is it status, salary, a long list of achievements? Or is it waking up without dread? Having the time to take a walk? Being emotionally present with people you care about? Liking the person you see in the mirror? Success isn't what they told you it was. You get to decide now. The creative side, the spiritual side, the silly, messy, insecure, curious parts that were. Once dismissed because they weren't smart enough, they were never the problem. They were just waiting for permission to grow. Talk to yourself like someone you love, not someone you expect to impress. Forgive yourself for being confused, inconsistent, or behind. You're not failing. You're becoming. That transformation isn't instant. It's slow, uneven, sometimes painful, but it's real. And finally, understand this. You were never just the smart kid. You were always more. You just weren't allowed to see it yet. You were thoughtful, sensitive, intuitive, wise, maybe even spiritual. And now, for the first time, you're not living in someone else's script. You're writing your own. So let the smart kid go. Thank them for surviving, for trying, for doing their best, and then step into the mystery of who you really are. Because that not intelligence, not grades, not labels, is where real freedom begins. So, here you are. You've spent your life chasing excellence. Wearing the smart kid label like a crown and a collar, you were praised for your brain, for your potential, for your ability to outthink the room. But now, the noise has faded, and you're left standing in the silence asking a question you never thought you'd ask. Who am I when I'm no longer trying to be impressive? That's the moment of awakening, and no, it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like grief. It feels like you're burying an old version of yourself, the one who ran on praise, pressure, and perfectionism. But grief is honest, and honesty is where transformation begins. Because beneath the labels, beneath the roles, beneath all the shoulds and musts and expectations, there's you, the real you, not the kid who scored high, not the adult who still flinches at failure, not the voice in your head measuring your worth by how productive you were today, just you, human, whole, curious, alive. Let's be clear. Reclaiming yourself isn't a one-time event. It's a journey, a quiet, brave, everyday rebellion against everything you were told to be. And on this path, there are no gold stars, no applause, no guarantees. There are just moments. Moments when you choose rest over hustle. Moments when you say, I don't know, without shame. Moments when you forgive yourself for being a work in progress. That's the new version of success.